How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Greetings, welcome. It's Eric Erickson. Delighted to have you guys with me. The third hour of the show today. The phone number 877-973-7425 if you'd like to be on the program. And I cannot thank Hillsdale College enough for letting me broadcast from the Kirby Center in Washington, D.C. I'll be off tomorrow and Wednesday touring. Tomorrow we're doing Arlington National Cemetery. We're doing a couple of the museums. The kids are laying a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And then on Wednesday, we got Air and Space Museum, the Capitol, Ford's Theater. That one ends in a bang. And so much more. What, too soon? Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? All right, we gotta move on. Okay, Abraham Lincoln, at this point in his administration, just like John Kennedy, still had more brains than Joseph Robinette Biden. If we're looking at the polling, y'all, it's what? Come on. If you can't make these jokes now, when can you? Never. I refuse to believe I can't make crass jokes. All right. So we gotta talk about the polling. We can't get around the polling today, y'all. We can't get around the polling because of who the pollster is. It's the New York Times Siena College poll, which was the most accurate pollster in 2020 and the most accurate pollster in 2022. When all of us in talk radio were still saying, nope, the red wave is coming. It's coming. It's the media. The media's out to get us. The media's lying. The media's trying to kill the momentum. The red wave is coming. Look at Trafalgar. Well, the Siena College polling in 2022 was showing us that the country was turning, that the attacks on Donald Trump and the abortion issue were working, and Siena College called the election right. They did it in 2020 as well. And now, if their track record holds, Joe Biden is toast. If the election were held today, Donald John Trump will be president of the United States of America. The polling is so bad for Joe Biden in the New York Times Siena College poll, they've refused to release all of the subtabs. That's how bad it is. So the reason they're refusing to release it isn't because they're trying to hide it. It's because they want to generate more stories about just how bad it is. Voters doubt Biden's leadership and favor Trump. That's the headline so far in the New York Times. The share of voters who strongly disapprove of President Biden's handling of his job has reached 47%, higher than in the Times Siena polls at any point in his presidency. If the 2024 presidential election were held today, who would you vote for if the candidates were Joe Biden and Donald Trump? 48-43 Trump, 10% don't know. Now, Democrats are out there screaming, right? I can feel it in the force. I know you people. Democrats and some Republicans are out there screaming right now, but it's not a two-way race. What about Robert Kennedy? What about Cornel West? What about the Libertarians? When you add in Robert Kennedy, Cornel West, Libertarians, Marianne Williamson, other candidates, it's only worse for Biden. The best case scenario for Biden is Trump v. Biden. The best case scenario for Joe Biden. You need to process this. You need to understand this, that there are going to be other candidates. Robert Kennedy now has ballot access in Arizona. He's got ballot access in Georgia. In the best case scenario for Joe Biden, it is Trump v. Biden. The worst case scenario for Biden is Trump v. Biden v. Kennedy v. anyone else. Shane Goldmacher, writing in the New York Times. President Biden is struggling to overcome doubts about his leadership inside his own party and broad dissatisfaction over the nation's direction, leaving him trailing behind Donald Trump, just as their general election contest is about to begin. With 8 months left until the November election, Mr. Biden's 43% support lags behind Mr. Trump's 48% in the national survey of registered voters. Only 1 in 4 voters thinks the country's moving in the right direction. More than twice as many voters believe Mr. Biden's policies have personally hurt them as believe his policies have helped them. More than twice. A majority of voters think the economy is in poor condition. And the share of voters who strongly disapprove of Mr. Biden's handling of his job has reached 47%, higher than in the Time Siena polls at any point in his presidency. The poll offers an array of warning signs for the president about weaknesses within the Democratic coalition, including among women, black, and Latino voters. So far, it is Mr. Trump who's better unified his party. Mr. Biden has marched through the early nominating states with only nominal opposition, but the polls showed that Democrats remain deeply divided about the prospect of Mr. Biden, the 81-year-old chief executive, leading the party again. About as many Democratic primary voters said Mr. Biden should not be the nominee in 2024 as that he should. Mr. Trump is winning 97%. Y'all got to listen to this. This is a key point here. Before I just tell you what I think, this is a key point of the data. This may be the most important point of the data. Mr. Trump is winning 97% of those who say they voted for him 4 years ago. And virtually none of his past supporters said they are casting a ballot for Mr. Biden. In contrast, Mr. Biden is winning only 83% of his 2020 vote, with 10% saying they now back Mr. Trump. That's brutal. Now, in last year's survey, Donald Trump led by 2 points among registered voters, and Joe Biden led by 2 points among the likely voters. Mr. Trump's 5-point lead was conducted in late February and is slightly larger than the national poll of registered voters in December. Among likely voters, Mr. Trump leads by 4 points. One of the most ominous findings for Mr. Biden in the new poll is that the historic edge Democrats have held with working-class voters of color who did not attend college continues to erode. Mr. Biden won 72% of those voters in 2020, according to exit polling, provided him with a 50-point edge over Mr. Trump. Today, Mr. Biden leads non-white voters who didn't attend college 47-41. And only 23% of Democratic primary voters are enthusiastic about Joe Biden, half the share of Republicans who said they were about Donald Trump. There are so many things to take in here, but the overarching one is this. White voters haven't changed. Non-white voters have shifted in favor of Donald Trump. White voters have always given Donald Trump a little bit of an edge. Not a huge edge, but they've given him an edge. It's black and Hispanic and Asian voters who have shifted to Donald Trump. Not necessarily to the GOP, but to Donald Trump. This is brutal for Joe Biden. This is brutal. Democrats aren't enthusiastic about him. Democrats don't really want him to run. By the way, the data about his age and competency, that's the data the New York Times hasn't released yet from the polling. His concerns about his age and concern about his competency, that's not released yet. They want more bad stories about Joe Biden in the run-up to the State of the Union on Thursday. You know, tomorrow is Super Tuesday. Donald Trump's going to have enough delegates to become the Republican nominee. Thursday's the State of the Union. Joe Biden could give his valedictory address and say, "So long, suckers. You don't like me? Here's Kamala." He could do it. The Democrats are praying for a shakeup of the race. Because here's the thing. Yes, We are 8 months from the election, and yes, I know some of you are already angrily keyboard warring me, beating up your keyboard, saying, stop talking about the polling! The polling's irrelevant! Stop talking about the polling! The polling's meaningless! The polling is wrong! The polling! Why the polling? Oh, I get those emails all the time, and yet, in 2004, the public opinion polling of January, February, March held true to the end, and Bush won. The public opinion polling in 2008, January, February, March, held true, and Obama beat McCain. The polling of January, February, March of 2012 held true, and Obama beat Romney. The only time the polling didn't hold true was 2016, when Trump never led. Yes, John Kerry got ahead of George Bush in 2004, but not January, February, March polling. Yes, John McCain got ahead of Barack Obama in 2008, but not January, February, March polling. Yes, Mitt Romney got ahead of Obama in 2012, but not January, February, March polling. The elections reverted to the mean. The end of the year polling reverted to the beginning of the year polling. And that is the pattern. That is the pattern. That has long been the pattern. It's 8 months away, and the voters are starting to lock in, and they'll give passing consideration. They'll turn their attention. But you're dealing with two men with virtually 100% name ID. It's going to be hard to shake up polling when two men have 100% name ID. The voters know them. And you know the irony here, the really rich irony, the punchline of this all, is that the voters hate Donald Trump. Now, again, you may like Donald Trump. You personally may like Donald Trump. The voters collectively hate Donald Trump. They think he's a crook. They think he is unfaithful to his wives. They think he is immoral. They hate him, and yet they're willing to vote for him for president over Joe Biden. That's the biggest indictment against Joe Biden in all of this, is that the voters hate Donald Trump. They don't like his character. They don't like his fidelity. They don't like his morals. They don't like his business practices. They think he's a crook, and they want him. It reminds me in the 90s in Louisiana, the Edwin Edwards, David Duke race. Edwin Edwards, the incumbent governor of Louisiana, who was a crook, versus David Duke, the Klansman. And people all over Louisiana, including in my family, had the bumper sticker on the back of their car, vote for the crook, it's important. They'd rather the crook than the Klansman in Louisiana. They'd rather the crook than the Biden nationally. They would rather Donald Trump than Joe Biden nationally. And you know what's more? I haven't even gotten to CBS News. CBS News has its own polling out. Voters who did not like Donald Trump's economy, voters who did not like the Trump administration, are now more likely to say they prefer the Trump administration to the Biden administration. There's the biggest red flag for the Democrats. The voters who hated the Trump years now decided, actually, it wasn't so bad. The voters who hated the Trump years now thinking, hey, you know what? I could go back to the Trump years. The voters who hated the Trump years despise the Biden years. Based on the Real Clear Politics polling average, if the election were held today, Donald Trump would win. If you text data to 33777, you can get my show notes. And you can see the map. The Electoral College map based on the Real Clear Politics polling average. If the election were held today, Donald Trump would get 293 Electoral College votes. Joe Biden would get 245. Democrats would win Pennsylvania, but all the other swing states, they'd lose. They'd lose Michigan. They'd lose Wisconsin, barely. Even if they won Wisconsin, the Republicans would still have 283 Electoral College votes. The Democrats would lose Nevada, they'd lose Arizona, they'd lose Georgia, they'd lose North Carolina. If the election were held today, Donald Trump would win. And he would win not because he's rehabilitated his image, not because he's done anything right. He'd win because voters despise Joe Biden more than they hate Donald Trump. But you know what? That still gives Donald Trump a win. We'll be right back. Hello, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number, 877-973-7425, should you wish to be on the program. Fox News just released its polling. Among voters under 30, Trump 51, Biden 45. Ooh, didn't see that coming, did you? Wow. By the way, so my son and I are in Washington. We're doing tours tomorrow and Wednesday, his 9th and 10th grade class. The 12th grade class, my daughter's class, has gone to the Grand Canyon. They flew into Phoenix on Southwest this morning from Atlanta, and they'll be touring the Grand Canyon, going to an observatory to check out Pluto and some other stuff. And this I find wild. February 12th, 2009, that's 3 weeks ago. 15 years, 3 weeks ago. It's the last time there was a multiple fatality accident in U.S. air passenger travel. It's the last time there was an incident on a plane where more than one person died. 11.6 billion people have boarded American air carriers since February 12th, 2009, and only 2 people have died. One on a Southwest flight, one on a Pin Air flight. That's it for commercial air travel in the United States. That is remarkable. Commercial air travel in the United States is safer than at any point in history. There have been near misses. There certainly have. There have been traumatic events like the door coming off the Alaska Airlines plane on the 737. Didn't have the heart to tell my kid her plane had been moved to a 737 MAX on her way to Arizona. She's a little bit concerned about it. I didn't tell her. But air travel in the United States of America has been remarkably safe. Knock on wood. Let's hope it stays that way. It has been. You know, when we were leaving Atlanta yesterday on Delta, we got pulled off and parked. They said there's an air traffic controller shortage in Jacksonville, Florida. And because of shortage of air traffic controllers, the skies were crowded, backed up, and they couldn't allow planes into the air until the air had thinned out and a shift change had happened at the air traffic controller systems down in Jacksonville. That's a big weak link in our air travel right now is air traffic controllers. God bless them. They're overworked and understaffed right now. Now, by the way, I've gotten several requests from people to do action alerts for the program, which I've done in the past. And the system we used, we let it lapse. We hadn't used it because we weren't using it enough to justify the price. But I'm talking to Americans for Prosperity right now because they are tied to a group that does an incredible system. AFP uses them, and AFP does such great work around the country as an activist portal. And I got to tell you some of the great work they've done. Y'all, I have been so I jumped the gun last week. I told you when I shouldn't have, but now I can officially tell you. The White House, the incompetent people at the White House, they should have bought Bidenomics.com since they so wrapped Joe Biden in the label. They didn't, but Americans for Prosperity did. Today, they've launched the website, Bidenomics.com. If you go to Bidenomics.com, courtesy of Americans for Prosperity, you can find out all the facts and figures about Bidenomics. So when your friends tell you the economy is just doing hunky-dory, you've got the facts, the data, the figures to show that it's not, to explain why it's not. Go to Bidenomics.com, brought to you by our friends at Americans for Prosperity. Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. Delighted to have you with me the last half hour of the program. Thanks again to Hillsdale College for letting me hang out in their studio today in Washington, D.C. at the Kirby Center. It's a great facility and a great school. So I gotta talk about the story. And I hadn't really wanted to talk about the story. But I gotta talk about the story. Those of you in Oklahoma listening on KRMG, this story is in Edmond, Oklahoma. You may have heard of it. There's a video came out of students at Deer Creek High School in Edmond, Oklahoma, sucking and kissing on people's toes during a school fundraising event. The school has defended the activity. Yeah, so the incident occurred on Thursday of last week. The school has a wonderful week of fundraising. Students were participating in games against other classes at an assembly called Clash of Classes to raise money for Not Your Average Joe Coffee, an organization that employs people with disabilities. A great group, by the way. So they did this during the assembly. 9th through 12th grade students volunteered to participate in various student-organized class competitions in the spirit of raising money. All the participants were students who signed up for the games were going to play ahead of time. No Deer Creek faculty or staff participated. Many dedicated students gave generously of their time, and it was a toe-sucking competition. Now, they raised $152,830 for the organization, but the clip went viral of students sucking other students' toes to raise money. I'm trying not to gag. Our school systems, our public school systems, they're having a moment, aren't they? 60 Minutes did a big story about book bans in the country, and of course they wanted to focus on right-wing book bans. You know what they didn't cover in California, school districts that banned To Kill a Mockingbird? Just so you are aware, To Kill a Mockingbird is my favorite book. It is one of my favorite movies. It is my favorite book. Y'all know there's somebody out there right now said, the Bible's your favorite book. Don't you say no other book but the Bible. The Bible is your favorite book. You know the Bible's going to be your favorite book, or you're going to go to hell, Erickson. Okay, after the Bible. To Kill a Mockingbird's my favorite book. I love it. I love the story. You know why I like the story? Because the movie is wonderful. The movie with Gregory Peck. I remember watching that movie as I was a kid. And it's such a well-done movie. The scene from the book that is captured so well in the movie of the rabid dog. And the dad shooting the dog. And Gregory Peck doing it so marvelously. But there are so many other stories, the visits with the family and things like that. There's so many other little subplots in the book. It's like the book and the movie are on the same material, but they're different, and they're both so good. What the movie cuts out of the book is in itself worth studying because it refines it to make a compelling story and stagecraft and visual storytelling. And yet in the book, those other little stories are so wonderful and give you a glimpse of the characters. I love the book. I love To Kill a Mockingbird. And progressive school districts in this country have been banning To Kill a Mockingbird because it's racially insensitive. Y'all, it is literally a book about segregation and racism in the South, and it's one that kids should read and learn about because of what happened. Praying for Sheetrock is another one like it that progressive schools are banning because it could be racially offensive to students. It's crazy to me. Now, there's a side story in here that I want to get to. And if you're Jewish in particular, I want you to listen to this story. A friend of mine sent me this, and it's deeply troubling to me. The punchline of the story, and it's not really a punchline, but it's deeply troubling to me. And I'm not going to use the word. I technically, in technicality, I could use the word, but I'm not going to use the word. But there's a story in the Daily Progress out of the University of Virginia. And the story begins with Matan Goldstein. Matan Goldstein had only just arrived at the University of Virginia when he says he was first attacked for his faith and his nationality. Meeting other first-year students in his dormitory, Goldstein introduced himself as an Israeli and as a Jew. After making this introduction, another student who identified himself as Egyptian approached Goldstein and told him he hated Goldstein and called him a bloodthirsty human being. That was the first week. A month before what happened with Hamas in Israel. Now let me read you this. This is the University of Virginia, folks, the University of Virginia. Since October 7th, Matan Goldstein said he's been the recipient of multiple death threats. During an October 25th walkout led by the Students for Justice in Palestine, Goldstein said he was shoved and then slapped in the face while counter-protesting. He's been told he, quote, sells the organs of Palestinians on the black market, end quote, and has been called Nazi, Hitler, genocide pursuer, and filthy Jew. Goldstein stopped wearing his kippah, also known as yarmulke, a traditional cloth cap worn by Jewish men, about a month ago. He started concealing his gold Star of David necklace under his shirt when he's in public. Several other Jewish students also said they've removed symbols of their faith from their person. I'm a religious Jew. I believe in God, says Goldstein. Why am I supposed to hide? Are we living in the 1930s? Am I supposed to be in a Jewish ghetto on the outskirts, isolated from everyone else? Why are we moving backwards? While waiting in line at a party, 2 Jewish female students said they were called the K word. Rhymes with bike. While another student discovered they were Jewish. When another student discovered they were Jewish, called them the K word to their faces. At a gathering on grounds, a Jewish student was harassed by a group of roughly 8 schoolmates who told them to turn sideways so we can see your noses, among other jokes. The student left the event crying. While only 4 students were allowed to speak with university heads, one, Nayed, said he heard of at least 24 Jewish students since October 7th who've been attacked. Assaults ranged from physical violence to offensive statements printed on anti-Israel flyers and posters scattered about grounds at the University of Virginia. Now here's the punchline to the story, and it's not really a punchline. A member of the Virginia legislature read this story this morning in the Virginia legislature. And where I said K word, he actually said the word. Democratic members of the state legislature came up to him and told him how offended they were he said the word. They were upset that he said the word. They didn't mention the story. They didn't mention what was happening. They didn't mention what an investigation. They didn't mention any of that. They just used his saying the word to say, I can't believe you said that word. I'm so offended. They were more interested in being offended at his use of the word than that a college student uttered the word to other college students at the University of Virginia. So you got 60 Minutes doing this big story on conservative book bans. They're ignoring the left's book bans. They're ignoring the left banning Dr. Seuss and To Kill a Mockingbird and Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, Prayed for Sheetrock, not Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. They're upset with conservatives. What are conservatives doing? They're not actually banning the books. By the way, you notice how the people who are upset with the book bans, they're not upset with the librarians blocking access to porn on library websites. It's just the books. They don't want the books banned. They want the kindergartner to see the graphic depiction of sex in the book that's not meant for an elementary school that found its way there. They're getting upset at the wrong things. They're getting upset at the wrong things. They're getting upset at a man using a word or that he's reading from a piece. So this reminds me of someone I know very well. He's a constitutional law professor at my alma mater, no less. And he read a speech. He read from a speech that was delivered on the grounds of that law school. And that speech contained the N-word, and he read the speech. And so he read the word. And progressive students decided they hated him and wanted him fired. Because he read the word from a speech. The speech was given about free speech on that academic campus, and he read it in a conversation in constitutional law about the First Amendment. And the students totally missed the point and used it as a vendetta against a guy who is perceived as a conservative law professor. The left is getting mad at the wrong things. It's their mixed up priorities, y'all. Their priorities are completely mixed up. Progressivism is a mental illness, and it's playing out on the national stage, where boys can become girls and girls can become boys, and our bodies must be surgically altered to align with what we think we are. You know, in a normal world, if your mind told you, a boy, that you were a girl, you would align your mind to the physical appearance of your body. And instead, the left has decided the physical appearance of our bodies must be aligned through surgery and costs that they benefit from to our minds. They're getting everything backwards. They're getting everything mixed up. And now they're outraged that a member of the state legislature in Virginia, when raising awareness about anti-Semitism, would say the K word, and they're not as upset about the anti-Semitism. They're not covering the anti-Semitism at Berkeley. They've given up covering the anti-Semitism at Harvard. Did you know that 3 of the members of the Harvard Anti-Semitism Commission have resigned because of anti-Semitism? The Jewish members have resigned because of the anti-Semitism they're facing by being on the Anti-Semitism Commission. That should tell you everything you need to know. The warning signs are all there. The fires have been lit. You can see the warning signs. The left is not only distracted, the left is not only getting it backwards, they're not only mixing things up, they're actively participating in the mix-up. They're actively participating in the evil. And it is an evil. It is growing. It's why you got to stand up for truth. And by the way, sometimes the truth doesn't work against our side. You still got to stand up for the truth. You got to be intellectually honest. Even though the left may not be, there's no reason to behave like the left. There's no reason to behave like them. You got to stand up for the truth. Not your truth, not their truth, but the truth. And even though it's sometimes hard to figure out, there is the truth. The truth does matter. And the truth is anti-Semitism is creeping across this country, and the left would distract themselves with outrage over what the right is doing so that they never have to clean up their own side. I have said all the time on this program, I've said in my professional life, going back to when I started Red State, if you don't clean up your own house, the voters will. And that's why I think, among all things else, Donald Trump is doing so well in the polling, because the Democrats, the progressives, refuse to clean up their own side, so the voters will do it for them. The left is even getting censorious in who you have business relationships with. You, a private citizen. They want banks, and more banks and credit unions are falling for this. They're prohibiting you from using your money in your bank to be able to spend it on things you want, like a gun. You want to buy a gun? Some credit unions, some banks say, I'm sorry, can't use your debit card or your banking funds for this. You got to put it on a credit card. And then the credit card company's like, nope, can't do it either. They're trying to do backdoor gun control with corporations. Thankfully, banks like Old Glory Bank are standing up to them, saying, we're not going to do this. They have their banking bill of rights that you can read at oldglorybank.com. You can get an account at Old Glory Bank in less than 8 minutes. It's easy to do, and you have no fees. It's great for your kids, too. Get a bank account at Old Glory Bank for your kids, and there are no fees. You put money in at 85,000 retail locations around the country. You can deposit cash that goes into your Old Glory Bank account. They make it very easy to do. I've done it. It works great. And then your kids have a bank account with no fees, checking or savings. And they get great interest rates for savings. And it's a great way to develop a long-term banking relationship with a great bank that's conservative, that has conservative values, that has a banking bill of rights, that doesn't share your information with the government, that doesn't restrict your purchases because of who you don't want to do business with, that doesn't cancel your account because you're conservative. OldGloryBank.com, OldGloryBank.com. 8 minutes or less, you can get your account. You can get one for your kids as well. No fee checking, no fee savings. They do loans, mortgages, VA, FHA, conventional, all of that stuff, because they're a real bank. Terms and conditions apply. Member FDIC, equal housing lender, oldglorybank.com. We'll be back. Hello and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. Glad to have you tuning in today. Tulsa, Dayton, Jacksonville. I'm live with you now every day. Noon to 3 Eastern, 11 to Central. Glad to be with you. We'll be announcing some more stations coming on here soon as the show grows across the nation. As always, text Eric, E-R-I-C-K. You can get the show notes. You should get the show notes. Get the live stream. Get the podcast. Follow me around social media with my pizza oven. When I get home, I'll be cooking some more. I got to make bread and that stuff. Somebody told me I could make great blackened shrimp in my pizza oven. And I haven't yet burned. So it's gas and wood. I haven't used the wood yet. I will. All right. We're going to move on to other stuff. We got a lot more to talk about, and I don't have a lot of time. So let me get to this one. I got to go back to the non-white voter issue, because the data now, Fox's poll is out, CNN's poll is out, CBS's poll is out, the New York Times' poll out. Non-white voters are moving to Donald Trump. And at this point, the data is too certain to show the trend is false, because it's showing up in everybody's poll and has been a sustained view for 6 months. I have said for the last year or so, we're living in a real-world political realignment. It can be disconcerting and discombobulating to people as suddenly people who once identified as Republicans are like, oh, I don't have a home anymore. Where do I go? People who were Democrats are like, I don't have a home anymore. Where do I go? The educated elite used to be the Republican Party Episcopalians. Now they've become the Democratic Party atheists. Now black and Hispanic Democratic voters are starting to move to the GOP, particularly to Donald Trump, and people just seem out of sorts and discombobulated. Where does it all go? What does it all mean? It's a political realignment. The last ones we had, you didn't have social media, you didn't have TV, you didn't even have radio at the time. It happens. It can be disconcerting. Real Clear Politics polling average right now, Donald Trump 47.8 to Joe Biden 45.5. Trump is up 2.3 points. When I looked at this on Saturday, he was up just 2 points. The polling continues to shake it up. It is remarkable to watch. Now, last thing before I get out of here. Big story over the weekend about work from home and how it's become part of the culture war. It hasn't become part of the culture war, but the media narrative on all these things is so culture warrior. Like, for example, so people who don't want boys and girls bathrooms, people who don't want boys and girls sports, we're called the culture warriors by the media. We weren't the ones who started the fight. We're drawing a line in the sand saying this far, no further. We're on defense. That doesn't make us the culture warriors, except they want it to be some sort of right-wing thing. The right is blocking this. No, we're for sanity. We're for being sane. The left is for insanity, and the left's fighting the culture war. But returning to work is not part of any culture war. It's part of business. And businesses are now favoring, when layoffs come around, people who work in the office against people who don't. You don't want to be laid off, go work at the office. This isn't some culture war thing. The people screaming about it, you know who it impacts the most? The upper income white working elite, the Democrats. No one else, particularly the non-college educated, are complaining about going to the office and working. It's the college educated elite of the Democratic Party who are screaming that it's some sort of perverse culture war from the right to make them show up at the office. No, it's not. Show up at the office. Earn your keep. See you guys on Thursday. I'll be out the next 2 days. I'll be back on Thursday from Atlanta.